Thank you so much, Tariq. Really appreciate it. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I hope you're enjoying the conference so far, and certainly don't want this to be like on a down note or anything, but I get asked this question all the time, and people are stressing and don't know what to learn and don't know what to do. So I compiled a bunch of things that I've already been talking about, but also added some things so that we have a better way to sort of frame this desperation that we're feeling in certain corners of the industry, because I don't want us to feel desperate. I want us to feel hopeful. I want us to be driving this kind of change. So I think it's important for us to know what's going on out there and also really analyze it in a way that we can use the information, not just freak out about it. So welcome. I certainly hope you're in the right place. I have a packed session for you, absolutely packed. So as we're going along, please do put your questions in the chat. I do want to get to those, and I will be asking some questions in line. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be doing some live polling. So if you currently are using your screens for everything, if you can open up another browser window, get your mobile device, and get ready, because we're going to do some polling instantly. right now. So the first question, which really helps you kind of judge, are you in the right place? Are you concerned about the future of your job, of your role, of your career? Because if you are, you're not alone, and there's good reason. But I want to focus on what we can do about it. So one of the things that will help me is if you can share with me what's concerning you, what's on the top of your list, what's the thing that's like scratching at the back of your head at night. So here's how to join in and provide feedback. Go to slido.com, SLIDO.com, type in this code 751221, and I've got a big list of things, but I'm doing just a cruel thing. I'm asking you for only one. Just one. What is your hottest topic? So if you could just take a couple of minutes, jump in, look through the pretty long list that I've got here, and I gave you an opportunity to give me another. And if the thing that's really vexing you the most right now is not on this list, because I just threw a bunch of stuff together, please type it in the chat. Let me know what you're thinking. So we'll just take a minute. Anybody having any issues? We getting there okay? Okay, I see some results. I'm going to start to show results. Sorry. See if I can get this to sync up. Okay. Biggest thing so far that's showing up is QA and testing time is too limited. Too limited. Is that feeling right? See a couple of other concerns: lack of development skills, potentially lack of career path. I think that's real in a lot of organizations. In some organizations, the career path has disappeared altogether. Yes, choosing one was indeed cruel, but I'm trying to get to like the real pain, because there are a lot of concerns on our plate, and I'll invite you to kind of think about all of this beyond this session. But I just want to get real pointy about it, for like a couple of hours. We got a couple of hours. I am pushing the results. Are they not coming through?
No, we see them, Dawn. I was just letting everyone know that you can see them. Yeah, just if they just look at their site, they can see them.
Okay, cool. All right. So number one thing, QA testing time too limited, right? So let me just gonna shut it down for 1 second. Okay. All right. So tell me quickly, do you see some green boxes on the slides, or is that just on my screen?
We see them.
You see them? Okay. Not sure what's going on with that. I apologize for that. See if there. It just took me a second to get rid of it. So I think there's a good reason to feel this crunch. There's never enough time for testing. And here's the reality of the situation. There's enough time for what we make time for. And if the business is not going to make time for certain tasks and activities, then the business is going to absorb some risk. That's the reality of the situation. However, we do testing, we like quality, we want in on this. So what might be happening that we're not either paying attention to or aware of? And I think one piece of it is, what is the business really interested in? We heard about this morning from Eric Van Veendahl, and he said it so eloquently. It's about business value. It's not about testing. We don't sell testing to customers. We don't make money on testing unless we're a testing outsources company. So where does testing fit in? How did we get to a place where in 2011, it's quite a while ago now, right? Quite a while ago. It's like the anniversary. The demise of testing was foretold by Alberto Savoia in his GTAC talk, Google Tech Talk, called Test is Dead. And I'm pretty sure it's not dead. I don't feel dead. I don't. Yes, I think poor estimation could play a role in not having enough time. But if we valued certain tasks and activities, if we made them visible, if the business was bought in, if project management or a product owner or the dev team even was bought in to what do we need to do to actually, I'm just going to say it this way, build quality in, because I don't believe you can test quality in at the end. How long have we been talking about that, building quality in? A long time. Like the first test team was formed in 1957, but guess what? We've been talking about how to manage things the way a lot of organizations are today. We started talking about that in the 40s when Joe Duran and total quality management were being brought to manufacturing in the US. The concepts of Kanban and Kaizen, Japanese manufacturing techniques, about lean. We started to talk about lean all the way back then, and it has finally made it into conversations about software. And how does it show up? Well, we got Kanban and Scrum that support us. Scrum came a bit later. XP, Extreme Programming, if you're familiar with Agile, should take a look at extreme programming practices. So much of it is present in Agile. Then we had the Agile Manifesto, and DevOps came along. And along with the foretelling of our demise was a book published by James Whitaker. I used to work with James. I had the good fortune of meeting him at Rational Software, along with Kem Keener, James and John Bach, Scott Barber, people trying to help us with our processes to improve things. And by the way, we were incorrigible. It was absolutely impossible to help us improve. We would not listen to anybody else. We'd ask, we'd bring people in and we'd say, what do you think about this? And how could we, should we maybe do this? And Whitaker came in and talked about how to break software techniques, and the whole development team just went, yeah, we don't need that. And I'm in the back of the room going, yeah, it's great stuff. We should be doing that. And, you know, James went to work at Microsoft and Google. He's back at Microsoft. But this book, How Google Tests Software, basically talks about this missing role. Google doesn't employ testers. They employ software development engineers and test people with a development resume. And that's it. Alberto Savoia is not sharing his concept about test is dead, and I encourage you to listen to his talk, not because he wants there to be a lack of quality or a lack of testing or anything like that. He wants to acknowledge what is happening and help us understand how to respond to it. This was so confusing when it came out that in 2019, he put together a little video explaining what he meant by test is dead. So here we are in 2021, facing down things like AI and machine learning. Is that going to take our jobs? Because, 15 years ago, automation was going to take our jobs. Well, maybe like 20 years ago. So what's the next thing that's going to take our job? Well, our job's not going away, but how we frame what we do might. So here's a very recent response to Alberto's video on test is dead. Someone pipes up when not too long after it came out and said, wow, it seems this guy has a very narrow view of testing. Yeah, that's right, Tariq. Yeah, it's definitely going to take our job. But just because an approach works in a context doesn't mean it will work in others. Well, of course. However, we don't have to be in an agile-ish organization. We don't have to be a Google. We don't have to be a Microsoft to be facing challenges with getting enough time and getting enough people to actually do the job of testing. So where this guy is going is to make a point. Just try building a payroll or control system without testing. Whoa, dude, nobody said there's not going to be testing. There just might not be a monolithic QA/test team or test organization that provides those services anymore. So pay attention, y'all. Pay attention. It doesn't mean it's all going away, but a lot of it is going to be subsumed by development processes and other people. And we should be paying attention to the rhetoric of things like test is dead and how Google tests software in the industry, because it can come across the radar screen of your CIO, your CTO, like it did at Salesforce. I want to say it was 8 years ago. Salesforce just piped up one day and said, we don't employ testers anymore because we're like Google. We read the book, this is the way we want to be, and all y'all testers need to find a new job in the organization. They gave people time. But if you can't code and you can't contribute as a developer on your team, your job no longer exists. Wow, what a nice email to wake up to. Yeah, that's a nice day. So this guy, person, who piped up about a month ago said, yeah, years later, he was right in certain contexts. I have several friends who are trying to find QA jobs and can't. So do I. I'm very concerned about this. One has been unemployed for over a year. Yeah, I have friends like that and colleagues in the industry. I'm worried for all of them. Also, test salaries are terrible. That stinks, unless you're an SDET. Okay. So this person found a transition path. I went from SQA to DevOps engineer, so I don't have those issues. That's an interesting way to skirt these kinds of issues. It doesn't mean we all will be able to shift from QA to DevOps engineer. I don't know about you, depends on your resume. So what can we take from this landscape, this atmosphere and environment that we're in? Well, first of all, it might not have been as quickly as Alberto and James Whitaker predicted this movement. It's been a slow evolution, but an evolution nonetheless. And whether your organization is agile, fragile, bleeding edge, DevOps, it doesn't matter. Testing is still at risk for the chopping block in every organization. And so the ideas that I'm going to share here are valid for us to think about regardless of our context. So here's what I think is almost the number one takeaway. We need to focus on testing because testing is not equal to testers. So if you're very, very invested in your role and your job title, you might face extinction in the near future. I don't want that. So maybe we can just start to think about testing and think a lot less about who does it and see if we can find a comfortable home, a comfortable place there. And regardless of context, it really doesn't matter. Testing is a side effect of development work. Developers do testing, even if they won't admit it. they do testing. Testing is living and breathing. It's subsumed by agile processes. The tricky part is we have trouble finding it in there. So we don't know when or where testing is happening when it's new to us. So it might seem during the early stages of an agile transition, we don't have a home. There's no path. What are we supposed to do? I hear people telling me they're idle for the first 10 days of a sprint. Like, that's not okay. That is absolutely not okay. So we've got to figure out where testing is living and breathing inside the development processes in our organization. Also, IT outsourcing is making some inroads, right? SaaS, PaaS, IaaS, all the asses, right? Software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service. As these things take over the back-end machinery of our organization's systems, the need for our internal role in testing diminishes. So be aware of that. These are just technical decisions, but we really need to be thinking about how they can affect what our opportunities are as we're moving forward. Right? Now, this really isn't to say that testers are going to become extinct everywhere. It's just not true. But there is an atmosphere, and we should be aware and planning for the possibility that it affects us in our organization. Because very much like Salesforce, when I heard this is very personal to me. Scott Barber was working at Salesforce at the time. He is the owner and creator of Perf Test Plus and my life partner. So it hit me very personally. And secretly, I wanted Salesforce to fall on their face. Totally. I was like, you wait, you got rid of my friends, the testers, all my peeps in the industry. Yeah, you wait. Something bad's going to happen to you. Nothing bad has happened to them. I'm annoyed by that. However, we should all be aware that if they can make testers extinct in their organization and still operate, maybe we should be a little concerned. Just maybe we should be a little concerned. So I've got a few survival tips in here. Here's the first one. Survival comes in all forms. If you're not willing to jump over to a DevOps engineer or an SDET, but you could just fly under the radar. Find a place where legacy processes, tools, and technologies are going to be hanging on for as long as you want to hang on. That might be until you retire or decide what's next, but you could just find a place to ride it out. That's a form of survival. If you have the skills, think about, investigate, what does it mean to be an SDET? And is that something you could embrace? It's worth investigating. How about become an expert in automation? I have a lot of colleagues and friends who have gone down this path, and they can find a place and a role and more than enough work to do any given day. How about start doing that next thing right now? It may be time. Maybe you're not okay with any of this. Oh, hey, that's an option. I don't want to invite you to exit, but put it on the plate if you're hyper uncomfortable. And how about transform? So the person that wrote a comment on Alberta's YouTube video transformed into a DevOps engineer. But how about transform into, instead of the notion of quality assurance and trying to make sure people are responsible for quality and try to police that in an agile or DevOps scenario, how about take Atlassian's concept, shift to quality assistance? How can we assist you? We have testing skills, experience, knowledge, tools. We can probably help y'all who are doing some aspect of testing throughout a project do it better. So can we shift into becoming a coach and a mentor and a guide instead of doing all the work, sharing ways to do the work? It's a thought. It's a thought. So tip number one. So technically, where does this leave us? Well, I think there are some things for us to accept about the industry, about our organizations, and about ourselves. I think we need to observe and research and analyze and decide what is the transformation that's going to take place if we are to survive. So this is the puzzle that I'm putting together for us. And really, it's tantamount to this. It's a strategic alert system. Are you in trouble? Can you read the writing on the wall? Do you see trends? And do you detect concerns that need to be addressed far before you get Salesforce's email that says, y'all don't any longer have a job? So good luck finding your next one. You have 6 months or whatever. And good luck with that. We're not going to retrain you. We're not going to help you. We're just going to give you time. So I'd like you to be ahead of the curve. So here's something to accept. This is just one of great many things, but I think it's an important one to start with. This is a quote from Scott Barber. Nobody wants to pay for testing. Now that sounds kooky. We'd like to believe that everybody cares about testing and everybody cares about quality, but you know what? My career has not shown me that. As a matter of fact, I have a little story. I won't tell it here, but it's got a title now. It's called The Day Quality Died. It was a very sad, depressing day in my life, in my career. where I learned that quality was not the most important thing. And people were interested in other things than testing. So this book right here, How to Reduce the Cost of Software Testing, is a compilation of essays from a great many people in the industry. And I know most of these people, Michael Larson being one of them. And Scott Barber wrote one segment called Right Sizing the Cost of Testing. And he really dug into the financial aspects of testing. And here's the problem with separating testing from development. Testing shows up as a cost and costs are targeted to be reduced. Costs are targeted to be reduced. But development costs are the cost of goods sold. And that's how we're going to make money and have the infrastructure to run our business on. And we value that. But once we separate testing from development, we become exposed. We become at risk. Because truly, here's the deal. Nobody wants to pay for testing. I'm going to prove it to you. So Melody, thanks for being interested. You can tap me and we can have a little session after. I'd be happy to share the day quality died story. But here's one about nobody wants to pay for testing, not even you. Let's say you bought a new car. You drove it off the lot. The check engine light comes on. 10 minutes after you leave the dealership and you call them and go, yo, what's up? I don't know what's happening. How can we fix this? And the dealership says, oh, just bring it into the service department and they'll check it out for you. So you make an appointment, you come in the next day and the service tech says, oh, well, the check engine light is on. Here's what we can do. We can run a set of diagnostics, AKA tests. And the diagnostics will take 1 hour of your time and will cost $100 of your money. And oh, by the way, it's not guaranteed to find the problem. Are you all excited to pay for testing now? Because I'm not. This actually happened to me. I was grumpy beyond words. But it's true if you think about it. We're not paying for testing. What we really are paying for is information. So let's think about how we can accept a couple other things and pull this together and maybe reframe our thoughts about testing versus testers. So sometimes QA gets a bad rap, really does. And the issues that QA gets blamed for are often not their problem at all. Could not be tracked to what testing is doing or not doing. It's usually project level decisions that cause these things, but testing and test teams often become the scapegoat. But this could be true. Time and cost could be significant and therefore makes us a target. Beware. And here's the worst. I've worked in organizations where this has literally happened. Testing got, kind of push. Then it sat in a little tiny box and we did as little as possible. And the team wanted to ship it. So we shipped it. And then nothing went wrong. And just like Salesforce, I was annoyed. I was really annoyed that nothing went wrong, because how can we justify the need for testing if we can do so little and everything seems to be okay? You can understand how this could be confusing for stakeholders, but if they hold that perception, it can become a reality. So we have to help them decode these things and get clarity on them. But we absolutely have to know if we're being blamed or being seen as this is the root cause. Just a thought. So here's another thing to think about. What is testing really? So I learned from Elizabeth Hendrickson. She wasn't the person that invented it necessarily, but through teaching workshops with her, we used to focus on this. Testing, when it's not full-fledged quality control, like at the end of an assembly line, It's really an information service. And even when it's at the end of an assembly line, it is tantamount to that, because that information tells us things like, do we throw out this marker at the end of the assembly line because it doesn't work? We don't ship it and ship this one. So we use information to make that decision. But technically, most of the testing that we do is some sort of evaluation that is trying to make an assessment of really two things. Is the work in hand complete enough to move forward, complete according to a spec? Whatever our notion of completeness is it done and no rework will be required? If so, please check the other thing. And the other thing, is it correct enough to move forward? So this is where we'd want to incorporate some verification and some validation. So is it correct according to a spec, a standard? Is it correct according to a user, fitness for use, fit for purpose? Does it do the thing right? And does it do the right thing? Both of these questions need to be answered, whether we're passing it along to a customer or passing it along in the chain of work. So is it good enough to be tested by others? Is it good enough to be system tested? Is it good enough to be performance tested? Whatever those things are, completeness and correctness are at the core. Why do we need testing injected in every piece of development work? And I mean every single piece of development work. It does not matter what it is, to move things forward, to literally optimize the flow of work so that as soon as we can make this assessment, we can either rework or move forward based on that information. So we need access to information about testing on tap as frequently as possible. So for those of you immersed in Agile, DevOps, supported by continuous integration and continuous delivery processes, frameworks, and tools, you know this is the backbone of what you do. And without that, you can't really accelerate the pace of development. Not the pace of delivery. I know the Agilists and the industry talks about increasing delivery, but we don't just want to deliver anything. We want to increase the pace of development work so there's no lag time. That's Kanban. That's lean. And that is the potential that we're trying to harness in Agile-ish environments. But we can't do it without the testing. We just can't. So let's see if we can observe where the testing is. Let's see if we can observe if our skills and our context actually have a fit. Do they mesh? So I think we need to consider for ourselves not only our preferences, not only our skills, but our ability and desire to be flexible. If we are not flexible, this is going to be a hard future coming up. Then we need to think about the organization, context, goals, needs, and their ability to be flexible. Some are, some aren't, some specifically are anti-flexible. And then what are the other industry-related context factors, technical factors that can shift things for us? We need to be aware of that too. So here's kind of the picture I want to paint. We need to focus on ourselves. We need to focus on our context. We need to identify where the gaps are and figure out how we can close them if we want to go along for the ride. That's all. That's a big if. You have to decide if you want to go along. So let's start with this. Focus on yourself. Let's do a quick skills assessment. Now with this one, you can choose as many as you want. So again, back to slido.com, code 751-221, and just go ahead and vote. There's a big list of skills and talents here. It is not 100% exhaustive, but it's a pretty big list. So if you could get in there and make some choices, let's look at the results. Oops. Let's make sure that's going. There we go. Okay, nice. So a lot on test process, test design. Liking to see that, test design. There's a reason why I left Rational Software when I was teaching folks how to use automation tools. Part of it was learning how to use an automation tool is really not going to get you very far. If you don't have good test design, object-oriented design, methodologies under your belt, automation won't save you. Test planning, like to see that. Test process, good. All right. All right, come on, everybody vote at least once, if you can. Okay, good. All right, test planning. That's interesting. I'm just going to put a footnote there. On test planning seems to be at the top right now. Okay, test planning is at the top right now. So with that, I want to ask you one more question. I'm going to ask you to vote again. How would you characterize your organization? Because remember, we're trying to create a map between us and our org, our teams, our project, and what's the alignment there? So how would you characterize your organization? I've got quite a few different ways to express this, like there's a blame culture, someone said no user would ever do that, opportunistic, change happens, gradually, agile-ish, safe, DevOps. So quite a few things to characterize the organization. All right, nice. Some things up on top. Go ahead and vote. It's at the top, Rustam. Characterize your organization. The other was do a quick skills assessment. This is for you personally. Okay. So not hampered by standard process, a lot of agile-ish. Good, nice. Okay. Getting a feel for it. All right, you can continue to vote because I'll have access to the results and I can share it with you. So I'm going to leave the polls open. You can go ahead and keep voting, right? So I just want to give you one quick example of how we might use this information. So if we could pit our skill set against the context factors of the organization, we could start to see if there's a mapping and a fit. So here's just a quick way you might do it. I'm not suggesting any of these things are real. This is all fake. It's all made up. But let's just imagine that you're an Agile coach. I might consider that a +2 in your box. You do application security testing. Maybe that's a +3. Test management, test planning. Maybe that's kind of neutral, not because it's not a valued skill, but because so much of test planning is subsumed by Agile processes and we are doing it together, that the traditional way of doing it might not be of value to the organization, the project, or the team. Just a thought. Same thing with manual testing. Got to get done. Got to get it done, but not necessarily by one person. Manual testing could be done by a lot of people on the team. Skills and automated tools, that's a plus because there's a great fit with continuous integration and our needs for quick feedback on all development work. So on this side, if there are certain skills that would help the team and we don't have them, maybe that's a minus. Just a thought about how we might put this together. And what I thought I would share with you is the results from a previous session that I did. And here's what they came up with. Their number one skill that they voted on was test process. Number two is test design. And number three is acceptance testing. Okay. Now, on the context side, far and away, agile or agile-ish environments were more prevalent. So the question becomes, how well do these things fit and support the needs of an agile team or an agile organization? Just a question. So here's our opportunity. If we kind of do this analysis, we can start to think about, all right, well, I got some test process under my belt, maybe some test planning, some test design skills, and some acceptance testing. Well, where can it fit? Well, there's a lot of planning and agile processes. Let's make sure it's happening, that we're taking advantage of release and iteration planning, task breakdown, and estimation. Let's not let people get away with estimating not enough time to do testing. Just a thought. How about retrospectives? About testing, how did testing serve us? Was it fast enough? Do we have enough automation to support us? Do we have enough manual and exploratory testing to support us? How's the quality of the product? Those types of things we can draw from our skills. How about shared test design ideas all the way throughout the CI/CD pipelines? There's opportunities there. We don't need to be working those skills in a vacuum, but we can share them. And they're very powerful here. How about acceptance testing might get done in a very different way in an agile context, but as we are thinking about acceptance criteria for product backlog items, we can start to build acceptance tests at the beginning of the process. That is provoking and instigating test first thinking on any project. You don't even have to run those tests. Just get people to think about the acceptance criteria before they do the work. And you have done it. You have done the job of test first. It's just a matter of figuring out where it fits. And initially, it's just a mystery. So this is the kind of analysis that could be very, very fruitful in your future. So I'll leave us with this. I know we need to go to break. Is that right, Tariq? Got a break coming up? I think we're taking 10 minutes. Is that right? Let me just make sure.
Sorry, I was on mute talking to myself. It's really up to you how you want to balance it. So we can take a 10-minute break whenever you want. If you want it, we don't have to. Yeah. Up to you. Okay, yeah. Cool.
We'll take a quickie one. I just want to leave everyone with this. We're like halfway. Survival tip number 2. I want you to consider that targeting survival may not be your best option. That might be a sad option. It might be a very sad and stressful option, actually. We don't constantly want to be in survival mode. So I want you to think about, what would it take for you to thrive instead of just survive in the current landscape, the current marketplace? Because keeping a job, to keep a job is just keeping a job. we can do that, but I don't know how exciting that is. So you can gauge your excitement. Do you like what you do? Do you look forward to it? Do you want to keep doing it? Do you want to do the things you don't know how to do yet? Those are questions for you. This is where we have to get real and honest. Are you out of sync with your organization? Are you lagging in skills, or are you ahead of the curve and you are just not in sync with them? So not in the best happy place. That's a concern. Are you learning new things? Some people want to, some people hate that. Just saying, this is really important for you to gauge. And think of it this way: surviving is a reaction, thriving is a choice. So when we get back from break, I want to walk you through some more analysis so we can build a model for determining how we can survive by building a map from here to there, and digging a little more into facets of what would it take to thrive. So I hope you've been enjoying what we've gone over so far. Thank you so much for your feedback and your questions in the chat. We'll just pause here for 10 minutes and we'll continue when we all get back. I'm going to put up a timer. I hope that's helpful. Okay, welcome back. I want to jump right in to the next poll that I want you to think about. And this one is a little more open-ended. It's not a survey, it's a fill in the blank. So if you were going to describe what are the things, and you can put multiple things, but what are the things that are most needed by your organization? What would they be? The things that will support your team, the things that will support your projects moving forward, accelerating the pace of development and delivery, increasing quality, increasing the skill and acumen of testing within the team. What do you think? So, patience. Patience. I don't have any of that. Can I order some? Will DoorDash bring some patience? Because I could really use some guidance. I think that's important. That whole notion of quality assistance, I think that's a really powerful transformation. Quality assurance to quality assistance. How can we help you achieve your goals, your business goals, not my testing goals? I think this is an interesting shift for all of us. Understanding, communication, I like that. Integration, like learning. That testing and development work is interdependent. So just picture it this way. If every time you wrote an email, you had to send it to a QA group for review and feedback before you hit send. Just picture that scenario. How much would that slow down your work? They would run spell check for you, and they would run grammar checker or Grammarly, and they would fix all kinds of things. They couldn't fix all the content, but they'd fix things. They'd make it better, basically. And they would also check their checklists, and in addition to the static analysis tools like spell check, and they would tell you what to change or if it's good enough to send. So evaluation, right? Verification and validation, it nets it out to that. But how much would that slow down your work? So we're getting some consensus around understanding and communication, delivering quality products, maybe being aware of the timeline needs. That's part of my The Day Quality Died story. Had to do with our delivery needs, not our quality needs. Literally, our delivery needs were different than our quality needs. I never envisioned that. I don't know why. Maybe I like quality too much to try to be convinced that anything else could be as important, but I did not have realistic expectations. And I was not in the QA group. I was actually in the deployment and delivery team. My title was technology evangelist. To this day, I don't really know what that meant, but I brought the software to the people. I created demos and training materials. I trained internal people, distributors and resellers, customers, and I really collaborated with the development team and the QA teams but I did not have realistic expectations, and we were not focusing in the right area. And when testing wasn't serving the need, when testing was really failing us, we actually delivered successfully using the rational unified process and all of our tools, a commitment to like 150% automation, because we were an automation shop. Like, we believed in that. After that failed us, 6 releases in a row where we delivered broken software to customers, literally broken software to customers. The team's response was, let's create a job requisition for a test automation engineer so they can build us a new framework, because it must be automation that's broken. Still, I have trouble remembering that day because I went to the bar and I drank heavily. And then I came back and made a proposal to the director of QA, a proposal. Instead of that job requisition, I asked for, I think it was 10% of the test plan in terms of time and effort, people, staff, whatever, 10%. And I wanted to dedicate that 10% to exploratory testing. That's it. That's all I wanted to change. That's all I wanted to do. They would not go for it. So the team has to be built in as well, but I'm liking what I'm seeing here. Communication, understanding, realistic expectations. Cool. Thanks for playing. Really appreciate you. I just wanted to share from this other session that I did, some of the epiphanies we could start to build by pitting skill and context against needs. So for that group, it's about 100, 120 people. Their biggest concern was a lack of automation skills for them personally. Their context was predominantly Agile and DevOps. But yet, good communication was the standout thing that they believed would help their organizations. So guess what? If you truly believe that, and it's true, you already have the skills. It's just about mapping them. So maybe our concerns are not in the right place. I mean, that doesn't mean we don't need automation skills, we do, but maybe automation skills don't solve every problem. And are those beliefs that we have actually true? And can we gather enough data to actually question them and take action for ourselves, for the organization, for the team? And I think sometimes we're coupling something together that might not be useful. And that is testing as a set of tasks and responsibilities that need to happen throughout a development process versus the role, the tester role, job title, whatever you'd like to call it. So are those two things really the same? I think we have to consider that. And if we are truly in this agile-ish context, we need to do a lot more sharing and a lot less owning. That's just what it needs to look like. And what will help us be successful with that? pretty clear, we all agree, good communication is going to help us. So how can we plot this out and make some pathways so we can develop a direction to go in? I'm going to use an example because this is, well, come up. I'm working with a medical device company right now who is agile. And here are some of the things that they're struggling with in terms of what do the previous testers do in the new agile context and what tasks and skills are relevant. So here's one thing that comes up a lot. We have good experience in test design and writing very detailed manual test cases. Is that a good fit for agile? Well, it's neither lean, nor will it help us be agile. We won't be able to maintain these things. I'm not sure what their utility is in this context. They certainly have a place with everything else, but that's not the only way to do something. But here is the reason that they continue to do it. Because they have regulatory needs and concerns. Okay, cannot argue with that. But the question is, are there other ways to meet those needs and concerns? So, oops, sorry. Let's look at another strong skill that they have. User acceptance testing is something that they've done, that they've coordinated. They have an internal user acceptance test group. I'm not going to comment on that at all. But if user acceptance testing is done outside of an Agile sprint, that would be, in my mind, out of sync. It's not meeting the needs of quick feedback to development, period. So we need to use some other mechanism, like I was suggesting before, acceptance criteria on product backlog items like user stories. Thinking about the normal, most frequently used happy path, alternate flows and exception flows, and building acceptance criteria and acceptance tests for all of those things could be how we transition our skill and experience in doing formal user acceptance testing. So in the traditional way, it would be out of sync, and it probably wouldn't meet regulatory requirements for audit. So where else could we go? Exploratory testing is popular, fast, enables us to provide quick feedback, solves a lot of problems. It's really great for Agile, but it might not be a good fit for regulatory. You get a lot of pushback on that. So here's the gap, right? We have something that's optimal, something that helps bog us down, makes the work slow, bloats the work, makes it hard to change and react, and that is going to cripple the team's ability to accelerate the pace of development. So what could the answer be? Well, could we do chartered exploratory testing? So charter, not like specific step-by-step test cases, but a test charter with a checklist. And could we log that exploratory test session so that it could provide evidence of test for audit? Yeah, in some organizations, we have accomplished exactly this. So it could be a great fit for Agile while allowing us to do a little planning. And it could help us meet our audit requirements for regulatory. This is just one example. I just picked one thing. I'm going to pick one thing all along the way. You need to pick all the things, but I just wanted to share with you some examples of epiphanies you could get by doing this kind of analysis, like, hey, chartered exploratory with logging is a better option in this context. And we think automation skills are really, really important, but they probably won't help us here. And this could have a big impact. So I want you to realize that the skills that you have are exceptionally viable and useful in Agile. Just got to figure out where to put them to harness their utility and get the best advantage of using them. So how can you take this a step further? What else could you explore? I just picked on manual test cases. Take any aspect of testing work. It doesn't matter what it is. Setting up environments where automation would help, creating, sanitizing, fuzzing, rigging, generating test data. Automation could help there too. So take any aspect of testing work and just absolutely ignore who the heck is going to do it. That is the irrelevant issue at the moment. Let's just let's do analysis on the work, not who will do the work, right? And as a group, not as a person with tester experience who's heavily biased in terms of how we might approach solving this problem, but as a group, let's come up with the best method that meets all our needs or the most important needs. So process needs, compliance need, maybe a fit for the team's skill and preferences, the context for sure, level of effort, right? We don't want it to take over the entire sprint. How quickly do we need to provide feedback, and how frequently are things going to change, and are we going to be able to adapt to the changes? That is going to be key. So here's a little worksheet put together by Robert Savarin, and I just love this. And you can use this and plug in your thing. So discuss the test task in whatever your context is. So say it's DevOps moving from Agile, or Agile moving from waterfall. So you're in transition. So here are some examples. Like, what do you do about a test plan? Some teams no longer create test plans. Is that good, bad, or otherwise? Eric Van Veenendaal this morning had opinions about that. But where is test planning in Agile, and is what we're doing in an Agile context sufficient? So do we do the traditional thing? Do we adapt it? Do we replace it with something else? Or we just say, we don't need test planning. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm suggesting this is a really good way to think through these things with the team. And then you can put it all together to analyze it. And this is what gives you your launch pad, basically, to analyze where you're going to go from here. Now, what does it take to really transition? It's not enough to identify the gap and say, this would be better than this. That's not enough. Not only do we need to be flexible, but our organizations need to be flexible enough too. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to change. So how can we incorporate this? Well, I think the challenge is really rooted in this. If we have become acclimated to doing things a certain way, and we call that testing, and then we are faced with a situation that is completely different, I think we lose our footing. And we tend to grab on to the things that we know and do those things. I'm suggesting what it actually takes to cross this chasm is to let go of what we know. And I'm not suggesting that because it's easy. I'm suggesting that because it's necessary. Truly, truly necessary. So flexibility for the organization has to do with adapting to new circumstances that are happening all the time. New technology, new competition, new regulations, new customer needs and preferences. They're just whacking us all the time. From the employee's perspective, an employee who's flexible can change their plan. Not, we had a test plan 2 months ago and that's what we decided to do, so we're going to do that. That is not going to fly in this rapidly changing environment if we want to harness opportunities for the organization. We just can't. So flexible employees are willing to change and work through obstacles to get there. That's tricky. On I'd say the organizational side, it's not just about being aware of the changes that are happening around us, but being responsive and making decisions to go in a new direction, even if we have made a big investment in something. That is tricky for organizations, and big organizations that are building big software do not pivot on a dime. However, if we need to change and shift, we have to be willing and we have to be flexible. So these are key elements to our success, because ultimately, in any context, it does not matter. When it's targeted at testing, it means that testing has to be able to move, change, and adapt quickly. What are we trying to accomplish? Quick feedback to development on whatever they just did. Why? Because quick feedback enables decisions and we can rework or move forward. That's what we need to know right now. If we don't have the feedback at the right time, work is stalled. That's not lean. Most of what we do in Agile is try to harness some of the lean principles that will enable us to accelerate the pace of development and eventually delivery, but development. so we can make sure we're getting what we need when we need it. So that means we have to put on a new hat. We have to put on the ever-changing welcome change hat and just get happy about it. I don't think that's easy, but it's what's required. So here's how you might be able to analyze flexibility on 2 or more scales. So taking that worksheet to your team and kind of framing the answers, like maybe the one about test plans. So what does the organization think about test plans? What does the individual think about test plans? What does the team think about test plans? So you've got a whole new version of what IoT means. And you could, instead of thinking about it in terms of leave as is, adapt, replace, or omit, that's the action that you would take. What is your assessment of it? Is it mandatory? Is it important? I don't know. I'm indifferent. It depends. So here's what it might look like. The individual could think that writing detailed test cases is a possible option, so it depends. But the organization could think it's mandatory. I run into this all the time. Still, I really wish this was not one of the biggest pain points that we're dealing with, certainly in the US, but for the people and teams I encounter in training, this is probably one of the biggest gaps. So it creates an opportunity, right? How can we get to a place where we can gain efficiencies in our context, Agile DevOps, whatever flavor you're using, and get a little farther away from this and get to something that really fits? This, mapping it out this way, would help us see probably the biggest things that would help us increase our agility and increase the pace of development. Now, down on the bottom here, where it comes to defect reports, you could have lots of opinions about this. I'm just making up stuff here. Maybe both the tester and the organization, or the tester and the team, think they're important. So while this seems aligned and is probably not our first order of business to investigate, not the first problem to solve, it still may not be optimized for our environment and our goals. But I wouldn't chase that one first. I would chase this one first. Just an example. So here's taking it to another level. Let's quantify it. People love quant, love numbers and metrics. I took quant in school. All I can say is it was a really big book and it hurt. So instead of using these words to describe everything, what if we made an assessment and put it on a scale, a 0 to 4 scale? So something that's mandatory as no flexibility. Hope that makes sense. When we get to the other end, it depends. Greater flexibility, that's a 4. That's big flexibility. You can use any numbers you want, but here's how I put this together. The flexibility index, in my opinion, kind of goes from fixed to flexible. And what does it really mean? Well, here at the, I'd say, mandatory level, we're rigid and there's some kind of compliance or need. It's part of our process, and there is no opportunity to innovate. One of the biggest things we're trying to accomplish in Agile is innovation. We do that with retrospectives. We are trying to incorporate constant process improvement opportunities. Rigid processes do not allow for that. But as we move in the other direction, this is what could happen. We should do that. Why? Because we become acclimated to it. So we've got people that follow the guidance or the process without any questions. And most of the time, that's people just doing the work without contemplating other ways to do the work. And there's also a lack of innovation. Now, this is where we start in our career, uncertain, the IDK team. So we follow guidance, but not blindly. We follow guidance with questions. We ask why, because we want to understand why we would do that thing. So the questions enable us to find innovation opportunities. It's at least possible. At the 3, we could do something. So we're open to ideas, and we're considering options and trying to find the best. And certainly there's an opportunity to innovate here, but it's not the main charter. It just means we have options. And then at the other flexible end of the scale, this is like where consultants live. The consultant's answer to everything is, it depends. So, once you can answer every question with that, you can become a consultant and charge by the hour for your work. Basically, we're trying to learn enough to make a good choice. What is the optimal solution based on this situation? And when we are there, we certainly have the opportunity to build in continuous innovation, which will enable us to continually align with the changing needs of our teams and our organizations. If we're not flexible, we can't achieve this. So putting the numbers together, putting the scales together, the quadrants, and analyzing that, it will give you an opportunity to observe some things, like potentially that our teams are not as flexible as we need to be, and maybe we're not as flexible as we need to be. But I want to point something out. If things are too comfortable and too much of the same, it is unlikely that we're going to be able to innovate. It's just unlikely. So what does it take to really innovate? Agile thinking, not agile development, but agile thinking processes. And here's one of them that I like to share. It's called liminal thinking, written about in this book by David Gray. And what he's talking about here is that when we are trying to do something new, we are confused and uncomfortable. And the knowns are not necessarily going to help us find the unknown potential and opportunities. So liminal thinking is a kind of psychological agility that enables us to navigate times of transition. Transition is not easy. So can we get uncomfortable? Like, I like this example. What if you lost your job title, didn't exist anymore, but you could still do testing work? Are you okay? Can you survive that? What if each individual team member did not get a performance appraisal, but the entire team got one? Can you imagine that? Can you imagine how it would shift your dedication to focusing on enabling everybody to be successful at whatever they need to do, as opposed to trying to do it all? What will it take? I think we have to admit that quality is everyone's job anyway. We're not deciding on the feature set. We're not deciding which bugs get fixed. We're not fixing the bugs. Other people do testing. We already know that. So if quality is everybody's job, what can we do to support that? Well, one tip, if you will, is search for resistance. When there's resistance about doing testing, when there's resistance about learning about testing or test techniques or test design or estimating for testing or doing retrospectives related to testing, it gets hard to change. And resistance is kind of a way to move away from something. And I want you to think about that feeling, right? We're resistant, so we're not moving towards anything. We're just trying to avoid something. So sniff out resistance in yourself and in your teams, and ask yourself the question, what do you think you could move toward instead? So a couple more minutes, almost done. One possible path is embrace this testing and quality coach role, whatever it's called. You're a team member, you're DevOps, you're an SDET. Can you collaborate and share your skills? Do paired testing, help people better understand test design techniques, lead peer reviews, share whatever techniques you have. Can you share instead of trying to do it all? That's one key step. But here's the difference between surviving and thriving. When we embrace agility and we lose our job title and we're still working, doing whatever we can to support our team's success, we can have an identity crisis. So focus on testing and not testers. That makes us feel left out. But we need to collaborate, and that communication is key, absolutely key. Responsibility for quality is shared, and if it's not good, there's no one to blame. It's everybody. Ceremonies, Agile, Scrum, Kanban, DevOps, they don't change people. People have to change what they think and what they believe and what they want. So with that, we can be open and flexible. So instead of thinking about what best practices serve us, we can consistently ask the question, what practice will serve us today? That's the potential that we're headed for. So can we pit these things against each other and build a roadmap? I think we can. And if you find yourself in this quadrant where things are rigid on one side and flexible on the other, that's probably not the best day at the office. Conversely, with the other side, I'd say these two are out of sync. But here we could be aligned, but not necessarily efficient, not necessarily accelerating the pace of development. But here might be where we try to get to. So our flexibility index for ourselves, our flexibility index for the organization, if we can find ourselves in this quadrant, we can actually embrace agility in any context, even in waterfall, and enable us and our teams to meet the needs for today. So whether we align that against our org, we take the org, align it up with context, take context, line it up with us, however we decide to slice it, we can find the happy place. So here's what I want to leave you with. Our last survival tip. The path, you do not need to know all in advance. And it isn't always about where you end up. Sometimes you go in a lot of different directions that didn't seem useful, but chances are you learned something. And I believe we tend to learn more from the things that go wrong than all the things that go right. So be brave, make a choice, try something new for yourself and for your teams, and try to get to that place where you can at least survive and potentially thrive. So I want to leave you with this. If you could leave me one word, one short phrase, I'd just like to hear your thoughts after our time together. I certainly hope you're enjoying the conference, and I hope you got some inspirations, and maybe you have some to share with me. So I put two things in the chat earlier. I have a Zoom room that I can set up so that we can have follow-on Q&A after this session. I'll leave it open for about an hour. I'm just gonna copy the information back into the chat, and oops, let me get that to everybody. And also there's the ability to set up a one-on-one with me over the next couple of days. And I'd love to spend some time with you. So go ahead and schedule that. Let me just get that link for you as well. And if there's any questions at all, thank you for your feedback. This is wonderful. Overcome, I like that. That's brilliant. Let me just find this link for you.
Thank
Okay,
you, Dawn.
There you go. Thanks, Drew.
Thanks so much. I just want to say on behalf of PNSQC, Dawn, thank you for such an insightful session. You guys make sure to schedule some time. I already scheduled my slot with Dawn, so I hope you guys, set up some time and get to learn from her experience. So that's going to be fun. So, also remember to rate the talk. I sent the links out in both for the talk and for the conference. So remember, feedback is key, and we're glad that you guys enjoyed this session. And Dawn, again, thanks much, and hopefully we'll get to see each other soon. So take care.
That would be great. And just so everyone knows, I will be posting the slides, but I wanted to include the results from the polling sessions. So once I get all that added, we'll put them up on the website and you can snag them. Good luck and enjoy the rest of the conference. And I hope to see you before it's all over. Take care, everyone.